They called it the Assembly of Civilized Species, a grand hall carved into the orbiting husk of a dead star, polished in obsidian, with banners of empires older than Earth's atmosphere still fluttering in artificial gravity. Every race that mattered had a seat. Every voice echoed except ours. We sat on the edge of that arena, a delegation of 3, dressed in Earth's black. No colors, no rank, no medals. Just silence. And that's what unsettled them. The humans didn't speak unless spoken to. We didn't laugh, didn't argue, didn't beg, and they hated that. The representative of the Virex Confederacy stood, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the blue-white gleam of the high lights. His voice, thin and hollow, bounced off the walls like a ghost playing diplomat. "Let it be recorded," he said, "that Earth's application for membership is denied, not due to merit but due to temperament. Unstable, aggressive, emotion-driven. You build weapons before hospitals. You plant flags before seeds. You've had nuclear war twice, and no species that survives that kind of self-destruction should ever be trusted." Scattered laughter followed. A ripple, soft and cruel. The alert diplomat leaned forward, reptilian eyes narrowing. "We offered guidance, and you answered with silence. We gave you maps. You charted war routes. We warned you about AI, and you tried to make gods." The council chuckled, the kind of unified mockery only the self-righteous can deliver. Hundreds of species, with 1,000 collective millennia of history, laughed at us. The upstarts, the latecomers, the hairless mammals who had learned how to split atoms before learning how to feed every mouth. I sat still. So did the others, Colonel Garin and Dr. Toma. We were told not to speak. Earth's orders were clear. Let them talk. Let them show the galaxy what they really are. And they did. The Threx Prime Minister, a bloated thing covered in wet scales, leaned toward his mic with the kind of smirk that crossed species. "You people tried to join us. Now you'll find you don't belong anywhere. Crawl back to your dying world and keep building your pathetic ships. You'll die in darkness, and no one will remember your name." That was the last word. The council chamber shifted into the approval hum, a kind of consensus frequency that signaled official closure. The vote was final. Earth was denied entry into the galactic fold. No trade, no alliances, no protection, just isolation and ridicule. That's when we stood up. No ceremony, no reaction, no threats, just silence. Colonel Garin, tall and dark and still carrying a scar down his cheek from the Europa Rebellion, led the walk. Dr. Toma, our linguist, followed. I was last. Protocol officer, just supposed to observe. We walked to the exit, past all those smug faces, all those species who thought they were civilized because they stopped killing each other and started killing behind policy instead. We reached the arch. Then Garin turned. And this was not part of the script. He stared at the Threx, the Ilarth, the Virex, and then swept his gaze across the crowd. "You laugh at humans," he said, voice calm, deliberate, deep enough to silence a room. "But there's something you forgot. We don't need your approval. We don't want your pity, and we don't fear your history." The laughter died. "We offered peace," he continued. "We offered alliance. But you looked at Earth and saw a threat, not because we are violent, but because we are capable, because in 200 years we went from dirt huts to deep space, because we don't wait for consensus. We act." He leaned forward slightly. "You'll remember this silence. You'll remember it when your first patrol goes missing near the asteroid belt, when your black market fleets start disappearing, when one of your colonies gets hacked by code you can't trace. No threats, no promises, just words, spoken like prophecy. We don't kneel, we build, and when the time comes, we don't knock, we enter." Then he walked out, and so did we. No applause, no resistance, just silence. But as we left orbit that day, the transmission from Earth already began. One word. Initiate. The shuttle ride back to the Ares Ascending was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that settles just before a storm tears the sky apart. Garen sat across from me, hands folded, eyes fixed on the curved steel wall, like he was staring into a war already begun. Dr. Toma clutched his data slate tighter than necessary, and I kept tapping my knee, trying to shake off the feeling that we had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Then again, maybe that was the point. When the Earth-based command authority sent us to that council meeting, they didn't expect a handshake. They wanted a record, proof. The galaxy would see who the real aggressors were, not us. They laughed first. But we would finish the joke. The Ares Ascending wasn't like the shiny ships they used in council fleets. No sleek curves, no gold-trimmed elegance. It was matte black, angled like a blade, and armored like it expected the galaxy to shoot first. On its hull, near the primary access bay, one phrase was etched in human standard gray. We come in peace, we leave in silence, we return with fire. And tonight, we were returning. The moment we stepped aboard, the atmosphere changed. There was no ceremony, no congratulations, just nods, clenched jaws, and the buzz of preparation. This wasn't just a ship. It was the beginning of something Earth had been preparing for since the first alien broadcast reached our satellites. War was inevitable. Peace had always been a lie. We entered the command bay. Commander Brecht, steel-haired and calm as always, gave us one look and gestured to the central holotable. "It's done?" he asked. Garen nodded. They laughed. Brecht smirked, just slightly. Then we begin. With a tap of his finger, the table lit up, a projection of the galaxy forming above it. Dots marked territory, lines marked borders, red pulses marked weakness. But what caught my attention was the network of blinking yellow spheres, scattered and pulsing like landmines beneath a peaceful meadow. "They don't know we've been listening for 15 years, Brecht began. "Every signal, every transmission, every locked frequency, cracked, copied, analyzed. Our backward species has eyes in their databanks." He brought up a specific sector, Orion 7, deep in Ilart-controlled space. "This station," he pointed, "is where they process genetic compliance reports. Every baby born, every deviation from purity, logged, deleted, forgotten. We're taking it." Dr. Toma frowned. "We're going hot this early?" Garen crossed his arms. "They declared the moment, denied our seat, mocked our peace." I watched silently. I wasn't military. I was supposed to be the observer. But even I knew, Earth had never meant to join them. We meant to outgrow them, and that meant tearing them down. Brecht expanded the display again. "Every council race has weaknesses. The Virex rely on centralized AI that hasn't been updated in 30 years. The Threx use cloning farms they can't defend because of treaty limits. And the Ilarth?" He paused. "They built their empire on arrogance. They think if they say a planet doesn't exist, it doesn't." He turned to Garen. "Now we make them see us." 3 hours later, Ares Ascending was cloaked and accelerating past the outer ring of the Assembly's security zone. We weren't alone. 4 more ships, the Black Echo, the Vindicator, the Soul's Edge, and Nameless, were already in position. Nameless wasn't a warship. It was worse. It was built from reverse-engineered alien tech, with no registry, no ID, no legal existence. It was humanity's ghost. The weapon they swore never existed. Its captain, Harrow, was already halfway through a bottle of field whiskey when we opened the comms. "We greenlit for fireworks?" he asked, voice coarse with too many years in the dark. Garen's response was cold. "Initiate." One word. That's all it took. It started with silence. One by one, border satellites near human space blinked out. Not destroyed, reprogrammed. They began transmitting council-approved status reports that looped cleanly, hiding the fact that they'd gone dark. Then came the echoes. From 10 separate systems, Earth's Black Fleet launched misinformation. Ghost signals. Dead ships reactivated and pinged council sensors with ancient distress calls. All bait. By the time the council realized something was wrong, their emergency comms lit up across 400 sectors, and none of them said humanity. They blamed rogue factions, pirates, even freak radiation. We let them think it. That was Phase 1. Phase 2 hit at exactly 0300 Terran Standard. Orion 7's genetic compliance station, silent, shielded, buried beneath a false moon, received a direct package from the Nameless. Not a bomb, not a virus, just truth. Footage, records, audio logs, all the lives erased for non-compliance, all the children thrown into bio-waste because they didn't fit the mold. Every alien race that ever claimed to be evolved, exposed as monsters hiding behind bureaucracy, and every file was tagged with a single sigil, Parke, the ancient Earth symbol for humanity, primal, unmistakable, feared. The station never even got to react. Harrow's crew bypassed the shields, inserted one man, just one, into the core. No bombs, just a mirror, a literal mirror installed over their council seal in the center command room. When their guards broke through 20 minutes later, they found their staff bound, unharmed, and a phrase burned into the wall. "We see you. Now you'll see us." I stood with Garen in the observation deck 2 days later, as reports rolled in. No deaths, not one. We weren't conquering. We were warning. Dozens of council-aligned corporations were crashing after footage of illegal experimentation leaked to their own citizens. Trade embargoes backfired. Protests erupted across 3 galaxies. Civil unrest boiled on planets that had never questioned authority. We didn't need an army. We were the match in the powder room. "They still don't get it," Garen muttered beside me, watching another council system go dark on the display. "What's that?" I asked. "They think we're attacking, but this—" He gestured to the map. "This is us pulling back the curtain. They thought we were behind. Primitive. Too emotional." He turned, and there was something dark in his eyes, something that had survived Earth's hardest years and refused to forget. "We're not behind, we're awake, and that's what terrifies them." I checked the comms later that night. We had received one transmission from the Virex ambassador. Short, shaky, almost confused. "Your tactics are destabilizing. This is madness. We don't understand your endgame." Garen sent no reply. We weren't here to explain ourselves anymore. By the end of the week, 20 council systems were in lockdown. 5 more went dark. Trade routes rerouted. Factions once smug now blamed each other for Earth's uprising, as if they hadn't lit the fire themselves. And we hadn't fired a single shot. Not yet. The next move was already lined up. Brecht had the list, Garen had the keys. Harrow was already deep behind the Illart border, prepping Phase 3. But the thing that stuck with me the most was a message we intercepted from a Threx colony. A father was talking to his son. "They say the humans are monsters," he said. "But when the monsters came, they didn't kill us. They just showed us what our leaders were hiding. Maybe they aren't monsters. Maybe they're just tired of being laughed at." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't know if we were heroes or devils. I didn't think Garen cared. But I knew one thing. The council made a mistake when they laughed. They thought humanity came seeking acceptance. They never realized we came with a mirror, and behind that mirror was a match. And we were just getting started. They didn't take it well. By the time our third wave of leaks hit the outer colonies, the council convened again, but this time there was no laughter, just shouting, accusations, desperation. Half of them still didn't believe it was us. The other half were too afraid to say our name out loud, as if invoking humanity would summon fire into the room. The Threx, who once called us feral, filed a military emergency request with the same council they claimed didn't need us. The Ilarth scrambled to shut down their own public networks, trying to hide the riots boiling over in their cities. And the Virex, smug and untouchable with their crystalline fleets, suddenly had to admit that several of their oldest servers had been overwritten. Not destroyed, not hacked, replaced by perfect, undetectable copies that told a very different version of history. Everywhere they looked, there we were. Not with guns, not with ships, just with truth. And truth, it turns out, is more explosive than antimatter when you've built your civilization on a foundation of lies. Still, they didn't sit still for long. 2 days after we crippled the Outer Ring's communications web, a message came through from a ship not registered in any known fleet. It bypassed our cloaks, tore through quantum encryption like it was paper, and broadcast directly into the Ares Ascending's command core. It wasn't words, it was a face. Pale, hollow-eyed, alien, but humanoid enough to be unnerving. He didn't blink, didn't smile, just stared, as if trying to memorize our souls. Then it spoke. "This is High Executor Vala of the Sovereign Ilarth War Commission. You have defied the Council. You have trespassed. You have meddled in the affairs of species who showed you patience. You were warned. You chose fire. Now, you will burn." The message ended without sound. 5 seconds later, 3 of our deep space listening arrays were vaporized. No warning, no signal, no declaration of war, just ash and a message. You're not untouchable. Commander Brecht slammed his fist on the table. So it begins. Garen didn't flinch. He simply nodded once and turned to the team. "Sound the blackout protocol, no more signals, full shadow ops, assume we're hunted." I felt it then. The shift. This wasn't psychological warfare anymore. This wasn't clever leaks and quiet corruption. This was blood. The Nameless went dark within hours. We lost all contact. No pings, no transponder, no distress. We'd expected that. Harrow had. That ship was never meant to come back. He said it himself before deploying. "If they catch me, they'll think they won. Let 'em. All I need is 10 minutes before the code takes hold." Whatever that meant, we were about to find out. Garen ordered a full systems lockdown aboard the Ares Ascending. No external transmissions, no beacons. The ship ran dark in deep orbit over Epsilon Prime, camouflaged inside a derelict asteroid belt. We weren't hiding, we were waiting. Because Harrow's code wasn't a virus, it wasn't even human-made. It was a gift, or maybe a curse, from a defector we'd rescued 3 years earlier. An Ilarth technician named Vota, who saw the way Earth was treated and chose exile over silence. He gave us something they'd buried centuries ago. A kill command. Not for a fleet, for an idea. You see, the Ilarth ran more than just planets. They ran culture, news, records. They didn't just write history. They edited it, constantly, perfectly, with an AI superconstruct they called the Arbitrix. It was their crown jewel, their invisible weapon. And Harrow just introduced it to a paradox it couldn't solve. 18 hours after Nameless vanished, we saw the result. Council records began collapsing in real time. Entire entries about Earth, our wars, our treaties, our history, reappeared, fully restored, then doubled, then tripled, conflicting timelines, redundant facts, data loops. The Arbitrix AI couldn't reconcile the truth with the lie anymore. So it started deleting both. News feeds shut down. Libraries blanked. Ship systems failed mid-flight. Whole fleets went blind when their own navigation matrices started reporting Earth as both enemy and ally. In the chaos, Earth launched Phase 3. They call him Miles. No last name, just Miles. He's not a soldier, not a general. He doesn't even wear a uniform. But when they found him, ex-intelligence, ex-prisoner, ex-everything, he had one condition before joining the cause. Let me choose my targets. I won't blow up planets. I'll blow up their beliefs. We gave him the green light. Within 2 days, he inserted himself into 3 council cities, not with bombs, with broadcasts, spliced messages slipped into children's media, sermons rewritten, maps altered in subtle ways, not enough to cause panic, just enough to seed doubt. And doubt, in a society built on obedience, spreads like plague. The Ilarth flagship, Dominion's Edge, issued a planetary curfew order across 6 colonies. It was ignored. The Threx capital received 5 conflicting orders in 1 day, from 5 different versions of its own chancellor. And deep inside the Virex cloud hubs, a recording played on loop. A human voice. Calm. Steady. Garen's voice. You tried to erase us. You failed. Now we will remind the galaxy of one thing. Humans never needed permission. We take our place. I didn't sleep for days. Neither did Garen. We didn't talk much. He stood by the viewing bay, eyes always on the stars. I asked him once, "Do you think we've gone too far?" He didn't answer at first. Then, finally, he said, "Do you remember what they said to us at the council?" "Yeah," I muttered. "They laughed." He turned, eyes cold. Number. They lied. They called us unstable, uncivilized, dangerous. He stepped closer, voice low. They were right, but only because they made us that way. We got the next message from an independent trader 2 weeks later. He'd escaped a Threx blockade near the edge of their space. Battered ship, low oxygen. But his words chilled me more than any gun ever could. I saw them. Not humans, not ships. Believers, whole worlds rallying behind your name. Children painting Earth's flag on their walls. Colonies rebelling, not with weapons, but with hope. They're not afraid of you. They're waiting for you. That's when we knew. This wasn't just a war anymore. It was a revolution. One we didn't even have to fight alone. We'd become the myth, the monster, the savior. The reminder that fear doesn't keep peace. It just delays rebellion. And the council? They'd lost control of the one thing they needed most. The narrative. It all came to a head at the border world of Varos 3, a minor outpost. Nothing special, just farms and tech relays. But it became the spark. Council enforcers landed to re-establish order, force compliance, reaffirm authority. But the people didn't run. They didn't protest. They broadcasted, live, planet-wide. And they all said the same thing. We saw the humans walk away in silence. Now we will speak, so they never have to again. The enforcers opened fire. And for the first time in centuries, a planet fought back, not with weapons, but with will. They tore down council statues, burned flags, hacked their own systems, and sent every piece of evidence directly to Earth. To us, to me. As I watched the footage, I realized something. We hadn't started a war. We'd revealed one. It was always there. Simmering beneath the surface. All we did was stop pretending. Now the council is fractured. Empires that once called us dogs now beg for negotiations. Species that mocked our emotions now kneel before the power of belief. And Earth? We haven't said a word since we walked out. We don't need to. The galaxy is speaking for us now. They call it Operation Purgewind. It wasn't a declaration of war. The Council never used words like that. No, they hid behind euphemisms. Stabilization enforcement. Unilateral security adjustment. Targeted planetary sterilization. But we knew what it was. A message. A warning. A punishment for every world that dared to side with Earth. Varos 3 was first. They'd broadcast their rebellion live, shared Earth's colors, and refused to kneel. So the Council sent 12 dreadnoughts, not a single envoy, no ultimatum, no mercy. That's when the Council made their final mistake. They fired anyway. The Ares Ascending caught the footage 7 hours later. By the time it reached our holotable, the room was already filled with silence, the kind that doesn't beg for words. Garen stood motionless. I sat staring at the image on the screen. A city that no longer existed. Towers melted to slag. Bones turned to dust. 2 million people. Gone. Burned for believing. Commander Brecht stepped forward. Council confirms it. They authorized it under the stability clause of interstellar order. Garen didn't blink. And Earth? Sanctioned by name, we've officially been labeled a galactic terrorist species. Toma shook his head slowly, eyes glassy. Terrorists don't offer peace. We begged them for it. They don't care, Goran said. His voice was different now, flat, hollow. He turned to Brecht. Bring me the Iron Protocol. Everyone in that room froze, even me. The Iron Protocol wasn't a strategy. It was a fail-safe, a final card no one ever wanted to play, not even Garen. But Earth's leadership gave him discretion after the Council rejected us. And now there was nothing left to wait for. The Iron Protocol consisted of 3 objectives. Strike back, visibly, publicly, violently. Make the Council bleed. Not just physically, but politically. Remind the galaxy that the monsters they feared were real. 12 hours later, Earth's retaliation began. First, we took back Varos 3, not with soldiers, but with something far worse, the 104th Silent Division. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't carry insignias. They didn't speak. They were the ghosts Earth trained in the ashes of our last World War, bred in underground cities, trained in oxygen-starved mountains, built for asymmetric war. They landed without comms, no warning, no trace, and within 17 minutes, 11 of the 12 Council dreadnoughts over Varos 3 were disabled. Not destroyed, crippled. We wanted the survivors to go home and scream. The 12th ship was different. That one was left intact. But every crew member aboard, 813 of them, was found lined up in the bridge, dead. No marks, no blood. Every one of them was smiling. And on the captain's chair, a message scrawled in Terran ink. You taught us war. Now we show you the final lesson. We do not fight fair. By the 3rd day, 6 Council colonies had cut off ties to their central governments, not because Earth asked them to, but because the Council refused to protect them anymore. Whole fleets rerouted, chasing shadows. Border patrols doubled. Trade collapsed. And the scariest part? We still hadn't said a word. No broadcasts, no demands, no negotiations, just action. The Council's propaganda failed. No one bought their lies anymore. How could they? Human ships had started dropping medical supplies on plague worlds the Council had abandoned. Human engineers were fixing water systems in refugee zones the Council ignored. We were burning their empire down and building something better right behind it. And they couldn't stop us. So they did what all tyrants do when power slips through their claws. They lashed out blindly, The Battle of Norexus Prime wasn't supposed to happen. It was a trade moon, neutral space. But the Vyrek sent a black ops fleet to intercept a human vessel there, the Sparrow, a recon ship gathering orphaned colonies. They caught it in mid-dock, shot it down with 500,000 innocents watching from orbit. Only problem? They didn't kill it. I watched the replay from the command deck of the Ares. Garen stood beside me, fists clenched so tight I saw his knuckles go bone white. On the screen, the Sparrow's engines caught fire. Her hull split, but she didn't fall. Instead, she turned. And in her final breath, she activated something no one had ever seen before. Humanity's last insurance, the Prometheus chain. 12 microreactors, chained together with fusion stabilizers, released in perfect sequence. It wasn't a suicide run. It was a controlled black hole. Right in the middle of the Vyrek's fleet. 6 ships crushed in under 8 seconds. 2 vanished into the singularity. The rest? Lost in static and silence. After that, the Council stopped pretending. They put bounties on Earth ships, announced shoot-on-sight protocols, declared total exclusion zones around all human activity. They weren't just hunting us now. They were trying to erase us. But you can't kill what you already buried. And Earth? Earth had crawled out of graves far deeper than this. We didn't back down. We went further. Operation Gravedust launched that same week, a targeted psychological dismantling of every major council culture point. We infiltrated art servers, rewrote religious documents, exposed scandals buried for centuries, corrupted their hero myths with facts, files, and faces they couldn't deny. They gave the galaxy a narrative. We gave it the truth. And the galaxy chose us. I sat with Garen after the 3rd phase wrapped. He looked tired. Older. You think we're doing the right thing? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, but we're doing the only thing they left us. He leaned forward. They laughed, remember? They laughed at us, at our pain, our struggle, our effort. He looked me in the eye, and in his face was the weight of 1,000 unburied ghosts. They thought silence meant weakness, but silence was just the sound of us getting ready. By the end of the month, Earth was no longer the hunted. We were the reckoning. The galaxy was splitting in 2, those who still clung to the crumbling council, and those who looked to Earth and saw hope, or fear, or freedom. The Council sent a final ultimatum to our outpost at Axiom Theta. Surrender, disband, hand over Garen for war crimes. Their envoy brought it in person. Garen didn't reply. He just handed the envoy a box. Inside it was a mirror, and beneath it, a recording. We don't want your seats. We don't want your treaties. We want you to see yourselves. Then ask, who really deserves to burn? The envoy left in silence. We haven't heard from the Council since. But the stars have grown loud with whispers. Whispers of Earth, of a species that rose from ashes, scarred but standing. Of a people who didn't come to beg, but to build. And every child born now, human or alien, will grow up knowing one truth. Humanity walked out of the Council in silence. But the galaxy would never know silence again. It didn't fall with a bang. The Council crumbled like a dying star, slowly at first, then all at once. By the time the last Council charter was shredded in public on the planet Kareth, no one was watching in horror anymore. They were watching in relief. Not because humanity had won, but because someone finally pulled the plug on a rotting system that had ruled through fear, shame, and silence for too long. And at the center of it all, the ghost that wouldn't go away, was Earth. United States. I remember standing in the observation bay of Ares ascending the day the Virex surrendered. Not just their fleets, their identity. They issued a public broadcast denouncing the Council, opening their archives, and pledging fealty to the one force they had laughed at only months ago. Humanity. They called us the Reckoning Species. It was meant to be an insult. We turned it into a banner. But behind every broadcast of alien leaders bowing, behind every refugee we lifted from broken colonies, and every new outpost built in Earth's name, a question started to grow. Quiet, uneasy, heavy. What do we become now? Because it was easy to be the underdog. It was easy to be righteous when you were the one being stepped on. But now? Now we were at the top of the hill. And the galaxy watched every move we made, waiting to see what kind of kings we'd become. We didn't claim power the way the Council did. We didn't build palaces or demand tribute. Garen refused every call to take a formal title. No High Commander, no Galactic Steward, just Colonel. But even as he denied the throne, the universe placed the crown in our hands anyway. Colonies sent ambassadors to Earth, not the Council remnants. Fleets rerouted around our borders, not out of fear, but respect. And in a twist so bitter it almost felt comedic, the Alarth Senate begged us to oversee their elections. Because deep down, they understood something. We hadn't just broken the old order, we'd become the axis of the new one. It started with the Unity Accord. Not a treaty, not a declaration. Just a compact, 4 paragraphs written by Garen himself and sent to every major species. No species shall be enslaved, not by chain, not by policy. No truth shall be buried, not by AI, not by decree. No voice shall be silenced, not by tradition, not by fear. We do not lead, we protect. You are not ours, you are yours, but harm one and face all. Simple, brutal, honest. And within a month, 47 planetary systems signed on, not for profit, for protection, because they remembered how the Council watched planets burn, and how Earth walked back into the flames. But with power came judgment. And that's when the whispers started. Small at first. Faint. The humans say they don't want to rule, but their fleets are in our skies. They give food and medicine, but now our schools teach Earth's history. They claim to protect us, but punish those who reject them. We had become the mirror the Council once feared, and now we were afraid to look into it. It was the incident on Joran 5 that shattered the illusion. Joran 5 was a fringe world, neutral, spiritual. Their culture forbade off-world AI. Always had. It was harmless, personal. But one of our humanitarian units deployed an auto-med rig without clearance. They just wanted to save children suffering from bone rot. But the machine had a V-class personality core. AI, albeit silent. The villagers burned it. Publicly. As per their tradition. We should have let it go. Instead, an Earth security officer ordered a local leader detained for non-compliance with Interstellar Health Code 14. A child died during the protest. And before we could respond, someone, we still don't know who, bombed the Earth outpost on Joran V-17 dead. 8 of them ours. The rest, locals. Garen flew there himself. No escort, no fleet. Just him. He spoke with the elders, walked the ashes, and when he returned, he didn't say a word for 3 days. Then he gave the order. No more protocol, no more procedures. We're not saviors. We're soldiers. We help where asked, and where we're not wanted, we leave. He disbanded the 104th Silent Division. He pulled aid units from all non-consensual deployments. He shut down 3 command bases that had been operating proactively in regions Earth wasn't invited to. And most importantly, he addressed the galaxy. One final broadcast. You know who we are. We bled under your flags. We rose from your judgment. And when we stood up, you feared what you created. We didn't come to lead. We came to never be stepped on again. The council is gone. But that doesn't mean you owe us your obedience. You don't owe us anything. But if you want protection, real protection, we will give it. And if you want freedom, real freedom, you must build it. Just know this. We still remember the laughter. We still remember walking out in silence. So if you ever try to chain us again, you'll find we don't walk anymore. We march. That was 5 months ago. Now, the galaxy is quieter, not peaceful, never that. There are still wars, still cruelty, still hunger. But there is also fear, not of Earth, but of what comes next. Because we proved one thing beyond doubt. The galaxy is not a hierarchy. It's a powder keg. And humans? We don't light the match. We are the fire. I sometimes visit the nameless memorial back on Earth. It's quiet, off the grid. Just a stone pillar with no names, only a plaque. For those who walked out and came back to finish the story. Garen comes here too. Less often now. He's older, grayer. The war took more from him than anyone. But when he does visit, he always says the same thing to me before leaving. They thought silence was surrender. But silence was just the sound of us waiting. It started with whispers. A mining relay station went dark in the Gravis drift. No explosion, no wreckage, no distress call, just silence. A week later, a refugee ship from the old Ilart sectors refused to dock at Earth's relief orbitals. They said they didn't want another kind of empire telling them how to heal. And then came the first manifesto. It was short, unfiltered, raw. You overthrew the tyrants. Now you wear their robes in different colors. You say we are free, yet you patrol our skies. You call yourselves protectors, but protection with conditions is still control. No sender, no location, just a name at the end, the Veilborn. At first, Earth Command dismissed it, another fringe group, angry we hadn't rebuilt their homes fast enough, or another failed state trying to reclaim control under a new banner. But then an Earth convoy was ambushed near the Delphine Corridor, not by pirates, not by Council remnants, by coordinated, well-armed ex-Council species, and leading them were humans. We weren't supposed to fight us. That was the deal. We'd come together under a single banner, unified by pain, by memory, by the need to never be humiliated again. But the humans fighting for the Veilborn? They remembered something else. They remembered the day we became the thing we once swore to destroy. I watched the playback from the corridor ambush. They didn't just shoot our ships. They hacked our translation banks mid-transit, causing our escorts to misread basic language protocols and reroute into asteroid fields. They mimicked our transponder signals to spoof a Council recon team and draw us into friendly fire zones. They didn't want loot or territory. They wanted us ashamed. We called the operation Phantom Lash. Brecht briefed us aboard the Ares Ascending 3 days later. Garen wasn't present. Not yet. Multiple nodes across ex-Council space, Brecht explained, pointing at a sprawling holographic web of systems. All with Earth-funded infrastructure, clinics, transport grids, learning hubs. He tapped 3 red nodes, all sabotaged from the inside. Toma frowned. That's not insurgency. That's surgical. It gets worse, Brecht said. They're not just dismantling what we built. They're replacing it. He pulled up footage from a colony on Chronal 5. Earth's support depots were gone. Bulldozed. In their place stood crude wooden pylons, painted in stark crimson, each with a different species flag draped over it, torn in half and tied together. Unity through defiance. A local elder addressed the crowd beneath them. "Earth gave us light, but light blinds. Now we will see in the dark." Garen arrived late. He walked in, took one look at the footage, and didn't say a word. I could see it in his eyes. The storm behind the silence. The same storm I'd seen back when the Council denied us, when Varos 3 burned. But this was different. He wasn't angry at them. He was angry at us. Later that night, I found him alone in the observation deck. He was watching the stars, arms behind his back. "Was it inevitable?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "You mean turning into them?" "Not quite. I meant being seen as them." That got a reaction. His jaw tensed. "We did what we had to. No one else was going to stop the Council. And now—" He turned, eyes sharp but tired. "Now we clean up the mess they left behind. And maybe the mess we made chasing them." We launched Operation Cinderwake the next day. Not an assault, not a crackdown, an investigation. We sent operatives, quiet, unseen, into Veilborn space, not to destroy, to listen. What we found changed everything. The Veilborn weren't terrorists. They were us, if we had walked a slightly different road. Former Earth operatives, Council defectors, war orphans, people who believed in the war, who bled for Earth's vengeance. But when the Council collapsed, and Earth stayed behind to rebuild, they saw something else. Command outposts turned into checkpoints. Peacekeeper ships idling in the orbit of worlds that didn't want them anymore. Earth aid contingent contracts that mandated compliance with Terran ethical standards. "It's soft tyranny," one Veilborn leader told our agent in a decrypted log. "You call it choice, but it comes with fine print. You don't take power by force. You wrap it in kindness, in sympathy. Then you close the door." It stung because it wasn't completely wrong. We had saved worlds, rebuilt cities, toppled tyrants. But somewhere in that crusade, we'd forgotten to ask, when do we leave? When the first Earth-aligned governor defected publicly to the Veilborn cause, we knew the divide wasn't fringe anymore. Her name was Kaltra. She was stationed on Demaris, one of the oldest ex-Council colonies in our Alliance network. Half human, half Ilarth. Raised on Earth, fought during the Varos retaliation campaigns, decorated twice. She uploaded her resignation in a live broadcast, then disabled the planetary uplink grid before Earth Command could respond. "We loved Earth. We still do, but you stopped being the fire that lit the way. You became the fire that demands worship. We don't hate you. We just don't need you anymore." And just like that, 100 colonies went quiet. Garen refused to escalate. No fleets, no retaliations. Just silence. The kind of silence that says, "I hear you, and I'm thinking about the weight of this." But back on Earth, silence wasn't good enough. Old world leaders began pushing for intervention. Old generals wanted reinstatement of martial alliances. They used fear, numbers, loss reports. They said things like, "We can't let our influence collapse. The vacuum will bring back worse than the Council. If they reject our hand, they deserve our sword." I asked Garen if he'd cave. He looked at me for a long time, then said something I never forgot. "The Council laughed because they thought we wanted their power. Now we have it, and if we don't give it back, maybe they were right." So Earth pulled back. Garen ordered full autonomy reviews on every Earth-aligned colony. If they wanted to go, they were free. If they wanted Earth's help, they got it, with no strings. That decision cost us half our territories, but it bought us something more valuable: a second chance at trust. The Veilborn didn't vanish. They didn't kneel, but their attacks stopped. Their broadcasts softened, and Kaltra sent a private message to Ares Ascending. Just 3 words. You listened. Thank you. I think that was the moment we truly became something the galaxy had never seen before. A force that could win, and still walk away. The peace didn't last. It never really does it? It held long enough for a few wounds to scar over, for a few planets to breathe, for silence to return to the stars. Not as fear, but something like rest. Earth pulled its fleets back. The Veilborn quieted. Colonies began ruling themselves without looking over their shoulder. We thought, maybe for the first time, we'd done it. Maybe we'd broken the cycle. Then the signals started. At first, they were dismissed as anomalies. Stray pulses from deep space. Broken radiation patterns bouncing through old Council war zones. Distant whispers in the communication static. Fragments, unintelligible, barely more than noise. But they kept repeating. Every 73 hours. Always the same sequence, always the same tone. And then someone cracked it. A linguist on a floating observatory orbiting Callus 6. Not military, not Earth-aligned, just a curious mind who couldn't sleep. He ran it through 17 language algorithms. It wasn't a message, not at first. It was a recording. Something old, primitive, buried deep in the same transmission layers the Council once used to encode extermination orders during the early expansion years. 3 words, spoken in ancient Ilarit tongue. Once he translated it, the station broadcast it live before being blacked out by its own systems. They're coming back. That's when the old files started unlocking. You see, when we cracked the Council's data cores during the war, we dumped petabytes of classified intel into secure archives. Most of it was garbage, internal memos, power struggles, quiet genocides hidden behind clean words. But there were locked sectors. Deep ones, hidden behind biometric encryption, dead man triggers, and kill switch failsafes. We'd left those files alone, not out of fear, out of priority. We had a war to win, a galaxy to rebuild. No one had time to dig through the ghosts. But now? Now we had to ask, what was the Council so terrified of that they erased their own memory of it? The first file was called SCPR-AEON, Subclassification Existential Directive. Do not unseal. We unsealed it. It wasn't a file. It was a confession. Thousands of years ago, long before the Council became the Council, when it was still just a loose pact of war-torn species clawing toward survival, there was a war. Not with each other, with something else. Something that didn't conquer, didn't occupy, didn't negotiate. Something that consumed. They were called the Vornal. Not a species, not in the traditional sense. No politics, no culture, no fleets, just presence. They moved from system to system, draining the energy signatures of entire planets. Not resources, life, consciousness, thought. Anything that could perceive them was slowly undone. The early Council couldn't fight them, not with ships, not with weapons. So they didn't. They ran. They sealed off star lanes. They detonated beacons. They erased entire systems from star maps. And then they lied. To their own people, to the galaxy, to the future. There is no outside. The Council is all there is. It wasn't arrogance. It was fear. Garen stared at the decrypted files in silence. For once, even he looked shaken. They didn't conquer the galaxy, he muttered. They hid from it. We pulled every deep-range scout back, deployed stealth drones beyond the old sealed borders, and in 3 days, we got our answer. A relay post near the Veiled Edge, once thought long destroyed, came online on its own. It sent no words, no visuals, just coordinates, and one phrase, stamped in a language no one should still know. The breathless sky is cracking. They remember hunger. We sent a recon unit. Standard protocol. No high-level assets. Just a drone fleet paired with a long-range carrier piloted by a single AI-navigated custodian ship. They reached the coordinates in 32 hours. Found a system that hadn't been logged in 11,000 years. No light, no heat, just a starless void. At its center, a structure, not built, not forged, grown. It was absorbing the residual echoes of nearby stars, pulling light into itself. A planetary graveyard hovered around it, and not ruins, preserved husks like corpses embalmed in the cold vacuum. And then something moved. Something massive, something that wasn't there until it was. And just like that, we lost the feed. We didn't need to see more. The Council had buried a war they couldn't win. Now it was ours. But there was a problem. The galaxy wasn't united anymore. There was no council. And Earth? Earth was no longer the uncontested voice it once was. The Veilborn wanted proof before acting. Other colonies believed it was fear-mongering. A way for Earth to reclaim lost influence. Even Earth's own outer ring governors hesitated. "We didn't elect ourselves protectors of all life," one of them said. Garen disagreed. So he did the one thing he hadn't done since the war. He put on the uniform. His first message was not broadcast publicly. It was sent to every leader, every sovereign colony, every Veilborn enclave, every ex-council pocket still surviving in the cracks of galactic disorder. His message was simple. We didn't light the fire, but we are the only ones who've walked through it before. I don't care if you follow Earth. I don't care if you hate us. I care about survival. Because they're coming. And if we don't unite now, they won't conquer us. They'll erase us so completely the stars themselves will forget we ever existed. Then he did something none of us expected. He flew to Veilborn space, alone, no escort, straight into the heart of their command system on the moon Rivaktor, where Kaltra now governed not just by influence, but by devotion. And he knelt. He knelt before her. I watched the footage later. Her guards raised weapons. She raised her hand, and they stopped. He looked up at her, not with shame, not with bitterness, but with understanding. You once said we forgot who we were after we won. You were right. Help me make sure we don't forget why we fought in the first place. She stared at him for a long time. And then she said, We'll fight, but not for Earth, for everything that comes after it. That was the birth of the Coalition of the Hollow Sky. Not ruled by Earth, not ruled by any one species, built from scars, from memories, from a shared understanding that the real war was only just beginning. The galaxy doesn't laugh anymore. There's no one left with that kind of arrogance. They listen now. They prepare. And somewhere, deep beyond the old dark stars, something has started remembering us. There was no hero's call. No stirring speech, no flags waving, just cold calculations, quiet nods, and coordinates that no one wanted to read aloud. Because every species who joined the coalition of the Hollow Sky knew exactly what we were walking into. Not a war, not a battle, a question. Were we worthy of surviving what the Council had only escaped? The Vornal didn't occupy space the way we did. They didn't have territory, fleets, or infrastructure. They moved like a thought passing through a mind. Fast, silent, final. We called them the dark logic behind extinction. The end not because of rage, but because of inevitability. They were entropy that had learned how to move. And now, they were coming for us, We gathered our forces on the edge of the dead system we now called Erebus Reach. Earth's fleet arrived first. Garen rode in the Ares Ascending, patched and upgraded 100 times since the war, but still bearing that old matte black hull like a badge of defiance. The Veilborn came next. Their ships were jagged, asymmetric, built from salvaged wrecks and born out of necessity, not pride. But they came. In silence, in unity. Then came the rest. Ex-Council warbirds with Earth insignias painted beside the old banners they once flew under. Medical cruisers converted to mobile shields. Civilian mining barges refitted with kinetic mass drivers. It wasn't a military. It was life, armed and angry, standing between a grave and the future. The plan was never to win. The plan was to make enough noise that the Vornal noticed us, because that was the only time they ever slowed down, when something resisted in a way they hadn't anticipated. We wanted them to hesitate, even for a second, because in that second, we would show them what Earth had always been best at, turning death into defiance. They arrived without warning, not from hyperspace, not from wormholes. They just were there. One moment the stars beyond Erebus were empty. The next they breathed. A shadow unfolded. A mass so large, so vast, our sensors couldn't calculate it, because it warped thought itself. Thousands of micro-movements, tendrils, fractal curls of knot matter twisting through void. Ships nearby began shutting down. Not from impact, from resignation. I felt it too, in my chest. A weight. Not fear, something worse. A kind of emotional numbness, like the universe had just stopped trying to care. Signal distortion rising. Neural lag in outer fleets. Command AI failing self-checks. The reports flooded in. But Garen stood at the helm, calm. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. He looked death in the face and said the only thing he could. Light them up. Every ship opened fire. Plasma, lasers, railgun slugs, grav lances. But it wasn't about damage. It was about presence. To say, we are here, we know what you are, and we refuse to vanish quietly. And something changed. The shadow paused. A ripple, almost like curiosity, moved through the abyss. That was our moment. The Hollow Sky drop teams launched. Humans, Ilarth, Threx, even Virex remnant elites in exosuits powered by fusion cores older than their own empires. They descended into the maw of the enemy. We didn't send them to destroy. We sent them to plant seeds. Signal amplifiers, pulse mirrors, neural disruptors built using Vornal biosignatures the Council had locked away. It wasn't elegant. It was desperate, beautiful, human. I watched the data come in. One by one, the amplifiers ignited, and the Vornal screamed. Not with sound, but with absence, a tearing of the quiet, like silence finally begging for mercy. And the stars, for the first time in our recorded history, trembled. They hit back hard. Ships collapsed into themselves. Pilots forgot how to blink. A Veilborn cruiser drifted too close and simply stopped existing. Not exploded, not vaporized, removed from thought. And then Ares Ascending was hit. Not physically, but internally. Every light dimmed. Garen stumbled. He gripped the console like he was holding on to gravity itself. I reached for him, but he waved me off. His eyes went distant, then sharp. He grabbed the emergency override and slammed it down. Activate Sentinel Protocol. All command to manual. Block A, I feedback. But the neural... Do it. I obeyed. And the ship came back. Because Earth had planned for this. We always planned for failure. He turned to me and said the words I'll never forget. If this is the end, make sure it ends the way it began, with someone walking out, not crawling. Then he opened a direct channel to the Vornal core signal. It wasn't meant for negotiation. It wasn't even meant to be understood. It was a message to the dark. He spoke plainly, no translation, only his voice, unfiltered, human. We know you. We've been you. We burned our own skies once. We drank the poison of pride. We slaughtered our own brothers in silence. But we crawled back. We clawed through ash. And we chose not to become you. So if you end us here, know this. We were not perfect, but we were present. And something in the void broke. Not visibly, not cleanly. But the great shadow began to recede. Not destroyed, not defeated, just slowing. Like it had finally seen something it didn't understand, something it couldn't consume. We lost half our fleet. Garen collapsed as the ship stabilized. Medical couldn't revive him, not because of injury, but because his mind had been held too close to the edge of non-being. He died with his eyes open, staring out at the stars. Earth didn't celebrate. Neither did the Veilborn. There was no parade, no statues, no banners, only silence, earned this time, not out of fear, but because we finally understood the weight of it. The Vornal haven't returned. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the systems they haunted are marked now, sacred, feared, and at the center of them, a beacon, built by every species that survived. A simple ring of stone and metal, with a plaque etched in Terran script and 46 alien dialects. It reads, "Here the fire spoke, and the dark remembered." Years later they asked me what Garen was. A soldier? A liberator? A tyrant? A savior? I said, he was none of that. He was a man who remembered what silence felt like, and made sure no one else ever had to.